Hello, literature program applicants to NISCA for fiscal year 21. This is Kathleen Masterson, Director of the Literature Program at New York State Council on the Arts. This recording will give you some highlights on applying to NISCA in the Literature Program for fiscal year 21. The fiscal year 21 application period opens January 28th, 2020 and closes on March 12th, 2020 at 4 p.m., not 5 p.m. and not midnight. We won't accept applications that are submitted after the 4 p.m. deadline. We ask that you submit any questions you might have at least 10 days before the application deadline, so we have plenty of time to get back to you. Please don't wait until the last week or the last day to call or write. There are 4 steps to submitting a completed NISCA application. You'll find the application guide for step-by-step information on our website at www.arts.ny.gov application-guide. As was the case last year, and as you'll see in the application guide, please note that number 1, you do not need to register your requests on the arts.ny.gov website, and number 2, we are now using, as last year, the Consolidated Funding Application Platform, CFA, for applications. We no longer use the Grants Gateway portal for applications, but you will still need to pre-qualify this year, and your contracts will also be managed in the Grants Gateway. We ask that you submit your pre-qualification material no later than March 5th, 2020 in order to make sure that your pre-qualification may be approved. Now, please read the Literature Program Guidelines by clicking on Programs on the top navigation bar at arts.ny.gov, then on Program Guidelines, and then scrolling down to Literature. The Literature Program funds nonprofit arts and cultural organizations in New York State that support the creation and dissemination of contemporary literary writing in the genres of fiction, poetry, drama, and creative or literary nonfiction, and in literary translation into English. The bulk of our support falls into the areas of literary presenting, literary publishing, and technical assistance. NISCA is committed to the development and support of literary activity for underserved areas and audiences, and to activity that supports writers who represent the cultural, geographic, and aesthetic diversity of our state. Priority is given to applicants that demonstrate artistic excellence, as well as a consistent policy of payment to writers and substantial efforts to reach and to creatively engage a wide audience through innovative literary programming and promotional efforts. Literary programming must be open to the general public and promoted as such. Now, for prerequisites, the publishers must have published at least 2 volumes or issues in the past 2 years, not reprints, and literary presenters in the public programs category must have a track record of at least 1 year. A minimum of 4 literary readings by separate authors per year is required for application in the public programs category. The number of requests: 2 project support requests, 1 per project category, or 1 general operating support request may be made to the Literature Program in fiscal year 21, or 1 request to the Literature Program and a 2nd request to another grants program at NISCA. Exemptions to this limit are literary translation and regrants and partnerships. We strongly recommend that first-time applicants to the program focus just 1 application on making the best possible case for their strongest project. These grants are highly competitive, and in fiscal year 20, we awarded $1,295,000 through 91 grants to 80 organizations and translators. A number of these were regrant programs that then redistributed funding to multiple organizations and to writers across the state on behalf of NISCA's Literature Program. Grant request amounts. The minimum funding request amount in the project categories is $2,500, and this may be no more than 50% of the total cash expenses for the requested project, as shown on the project budget. A general operating support applicant may request no more than 25% of the total cash expenses for the most recently completed fiscal year. The minimum request in GOS is $5,000. And here are our categories of support and fundable expenses. The Literature Program will make grants in fiscal year 21, again, calendar year 21, for New York State literary activity in the following categories with allowable expenses. specified below. Before contacting the staff with questions, please read the guidelines carefully, again, at arts.ny.gov. General operating support. This is unrestricted support for New York State activities. The applicant organization's mission must be literary. Organizations presenting public programs in this category are asked to prepare up to 3 minutes of video showing a recent literary reading from last season. Book and literary magazine publications is project support. Literary publishing, this is for literary publishing, project support for contributors, editors' fees, production, promotion, and distribution costs. Public programs, another project support category. It is project support for writers, curators' fees, and promotional costs for a series of public readings, literary events, festivals, or writing workshops. Organizations in this category are asked to prepare up to 3 minutes of video showing a recent literary reading from last season, preferably. Video should demonstrate the artistic quality of the reading and show as well the audience and public space in which the reading took place. Literary translation, another project category. This is project support for translators' fees for literary translations in progress into English. This category is exempt from the council-wide 2-request limit. Requests may be for a minimum of $2,500 and a maximum of $10,000. Translators are required to submit manuscripts of translations in progress, 10 to 15 pages in English and 10 to 15 pages in the original language with the original diacritical marks intact. Regrants and partnerships. Oh, and the literary translation, book and magazine publication, and public programs categories, the fiscal sponsor, you may use a fiscal sponsor, and the fiscal sponsor must submit the sponsored project form for these requests, and the applicant must fill it out. Regrants and partnerships, our last category. This is project support by invitation from NISCA only. This category is exempt from the council-wide 2-request limit, and you must discuss any application in this category with staff. You'll find details on prerequisites for each category in the guidelines. Please read the guidelines for your category carefully before you write to us with questions. Also, see the guidelines and guidelines resource sections for literature-specific technical assistance programs and resources. Tips and priorities for this year. Please don't assume we know your organization or your literary work, as panelists come from all over the state and rely heavily on the content of the application. Make sure your organization's website is up to date, including a list of board members and officers' names. Remember, the website is your organization's public face and one of the first places that panelists will go to learn about your organization. Do discuss in your application your organization's policies and activities regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion as it relates to staffing, artistic work, governance, including your board, and your audience and community. Use the changes and challenges question to outline any financial or administrative issues you are facing, as well as plans to address them. Double check that you have answered all narrative questions for your category and provided all required support materials. This includes hard copies of books and magazines and electronic copies of recently published work from literary publishers. Applicants presenting public programs must submit, as mentioned, a video of a recent reading in last season is best. Translators must submit manuscripts in English and in the original language, as well as a translator statement. Now, you'll see here some information about the consolidated funding application. This is the portal through which you will submit your application. And finally, remember, a strong application will provide the facts requested with accuracy, clarity, and brevity, and it gives a glimpse of the passion behind the facts. You may contact me at Kathleen Masterson at arts.ny.gov and 212-459-8826. And finally, thank you from the Council for the glorious and essential work you do on behalf of contemporary literary writing, writers, and literary life in New York State.